Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Got a lot to talk to you about today, a lot revolving in the sports world. Aaron Rodgers, should he stay in Green Bay or not? Jared Goff, Les Snead, the GM of the Rams, made some controversial comments. Going to break that one down. And a lot of storylines heading into Super Bowl week next week. But is this Super Bowl bigger for Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes? That's coming up along with a tribute to Kobe Bryant with my favorite moments from his career. So a lot of rumblings came out of Green Bay, rumors about Aaron Rodgers and his uncertainty with the team potentially wanting out of Green Bay. And mind you, that when these interviews took place, they took place 15 minutes after he had just lost the NFC Championship game, coming off his most disappointing loss of his career. So, as you can imagine, the emotions are very raw, and he's very candid and honest and open in his remarks. And the backdrop to those comments is that prior to this season, the Packers organization drafted a quarterback in Jordan Love in the first round with the 26th overall pick in the NFL draft last year. So already they were sending a message to Aaron Rodgers that, hey, you're no longer an untradeable asset. You're no longer necessarily a foundational piece of our organization moving forward. That was the message that they sent to him. And he understood that and he acknowledged that. And even said in his comments that it was more of a realization, I think, that ultimately my future is not necessarily in my control. That was just kind of hit me in the moment. He was thinking about guys like Aaron Jones, Corey Linsley, and how all their futures are not necessarily certain, and neither are his. And his days in the sun are beginning to set. Now, fortunately, or I shouldn't say fortunately, but in Wisconsin, the sun doesn't last very long anyway. So your days in the sun between October, the end of October, and the beginning of April don't really last that long anyway. But his time in the sun is beginning to set. And I think that what's important is the fact that Rodgers acknowledges this. Whenever we look at Tom Brady and Bill Belichick in their relationship, we saw that if Belichick was willing to trade and lead a guy in Tom Brady out the back door, out the doggy door in the back of the house, and he's a 5-time Super Bowl champion, now a 6-time Super Bowl champion, 4-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time NFL MVP. If that guy can be let out the back door, then a guy in Aaron Rodgers who's merely won one Super Bowl with this great franchise in Green Bay, he could also be escorted out. That's not out of the realm of possibility. But we, as members of the media, our greatest hope when we interview athletes, when we question them after games, is that they're going to be completely transparent and divulge exactly what they're feeling, their true feelings and true emotions in moments, in losses, in wins. That's what we hope. We want to hear about what motivates them, what ticks them off, how they get up for different opponents, what drives them, why are they so competitive. We encourage our athletes to disclose that information to us. That's what we hope as media members. And the one time that we finally do get a guy in Aaron Rodgers who is ultra candid and just very blunt about his future, saying he's uncertain, and we're asking him 15 minutes after the most disappointing loss of his season, and now we're bashing him and criticizing him for being vague and aloof and unequivocal about his future. We're bashing the guy. He's being open. He's being honest. He's not really sure because he's not sure what message the front office is sending to him year in and year out. these unequivocal remarks, or these equivocal remarks rather, they didn't just appear out of thin air. These had been percolating for the entire season, and finally they bubbled over and boiled over now. But if I'm Aaron Rodgers, and I got asked this by a viewer of the show on Monday, should Aaron Rodgers stay in Green Bay or not? The answer is he absolutely should remain in Green Bay. And there are three key reasons why. Three key reasons why. First of all, you're the best team in the division. So every single season, as long as you've got Aaron Rodgers, you are going to win your division. You're going to secure a home playoff spot and at least make the postseason. Give yourself a chance. You look at the rest of this division, it's an easily winnable division for the Green Bay Packers. Look at the Bears. I said on Monday, their situation is a mess. They don't know what to do with Mitch Trubisky. He's clearly not the quarterback of their future, but they're too good to be able to draft a quarterback high enough where one will still be available. Not to mention your best wide receiver in Allen Robinson as a free agent. He'll likely leave, assuming the Bears can't pay him. You go to the Minnesota Vikings. They've got no direction. Kirk Cousins, there seems to be a ceiling with him. He can't seem to break through past, let alone one playoff series. He won one matchup against the Saints, but that's it. He's taken a step back. There's no future there. And then with the Detroit Lions, listen, I wish Dan Campbell all the best. I genuinely do. I hope that he pans out for them. But he appeared to have just sniffed smelling salts prior to his introductory conference. And that's not a great sign moving forward if this is the leader of your franchise, of trying to change the culture there. So that's first of all. Second of all, you're the top two quarterback in the conference, in the National Football Conference. The only competition you really have is Russell Wilson in Seattle and an aging Tom Brady, who, listen, I understand he keeps playing extremely well, and it's amazing. He's not getting any younger. Whether he's getting older or not, that's debatable. But he's not getting any younger. And Aaron Rodgers is just 37. He's about to win the MVP. So really, you're looking at an aging Brady and one legitimate threat in Russell Wilson. You go to the AFC, you got to go through Mahomes. Mahomes doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. And then, if you're lucky enough to get to Mahomes, you got to battle an ascending Josh Allen in Buffalo, Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens. We'll see what Trevor Lawrence is with likely the Jacksonville Jaguars. There are a lot of really good teams. Deshaun Watson could stay in the AFC with a better team. He could be with the Indianapolis Colts, or he could be with another team, right? So you're a top two quarterback in your own conference. And third, the organization just drafted, as I mentioned, Jordan Love, a backup quarterback, with your first round pick. And this is a guy who did not have any bearing on the outcome of your season. He had no impact whatsoever. He didn't play in a single game. He didn't play in a single drive. He didn't take a single snap. He did not see any field time. No action whatsoever. So literally, all he was perhaps a burden. Wasn't an asset to you this entire season. And on top of that, the guy who you tried to replace is likely going to win the MVP. 48 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions, 4,300 yards. Best QBR in the NFL, best quarterback rating in the NFL. So now you can wield so much power and hold this franchise's feet to the fire because all the leverage has shifted entirely in your favor, in your direction. You think the teammates of Aaron Rodgers are going to be beholden or feel beholden to Jordan Love or the Packers organization over Aaron Rodgers? I don't think so at all. So if you're Aaron Rodgers, And he's even come out and indicated that he may not necessarily leave. He would like to stay. Of course, he's saying all the right things. But I think people overreact when you interview a guy literally 15 minutes after the most disappointing loss of his career. And you're expecting him to be optimistic, to have this positive outlook, to say the right things to the Green Bay Packers fan base, to their nation. But what we want is transparency and for athletes to reveal what they're truly thinking. And when a guy finally does, and it's not necessarily what we want to hear, we freak out. Now, transitioning to another team in the LA Rams and their situation with Jared Goff, talk about transparency. There is not a lot of transparency going on right now with the Los Angeles Rams. I guess if you look at it from two perspectives, on the one hand, they have made it very clear that Jared Goff is their quarterback for now, but they also haven't indicated any long-term commitment to him outside of the financial commitment. So if you listen to Sean McVay, a day after the Rams lost 32-18 to the Green Bay Packers in the divisional round. Now, mind you, Jared Goff was coming off of a broken thumb. He had surgery 3 weeks prior to repair that thumb. So the fact that he even went out there, gave you a pretty solid effort, 177 yards, a touchdown. But when asked after the game, hey, what's the status of Jared Goff? Sean McVay was pretty blunt. He said Jared Goff is a Ram at this moment. Yeah, he's our quarterback right now. And Les Snead came out a couple days ago and basically echoed those sentiments. He said, yeah, Jared Goff is a Ram right now. It's too early to speculate about the future. It's a beautiful mystery. So for some reason, it's a beautiful mystery seems to pop up again. Aaron Rodgers used it. Now Les Snead used it. I don't really know why it's a beautiful mystery is all of a sudden a beautiful adage. Don't really know why, but it is. And one of the things that I've really appreciated about Les Snead, not just as a Rams fan, as a football fan, is he's extremely innovative. He's bold. He's willing to be daring, to take risks. You can appreciate that in anyone with their job. Not settling for complacency, being an early innovator. You appreciate that. Daryl Morey, with the former GM of the Rockets, now the GM of the 76ers, he was a bold risk taker as a GM, discovered and identified James Harden, brought him out of OKC, transformed his career, turned him into an 8-time All-Star. That took cojones to do. No one else had that kind of foresight. Andy Reid was the first coach to all of a sudden say, hey, third and short situations are not running plays. These are going to be designated third down pass plays, third and short. That totally went against the grain. Totally a contrarian point and approach. And even Les Snead, when he signed Todd Gurley at the time to the most lucrative deal for a running back, sure, he got ridiculed for it. And looking back on it, it wasn't a great deal. But in a cloak and dagger manner, he just cut bait with Gurley last year. He literally just cut him. So with anything, some are going to hit, some are going to miss. You have to take chances. The teams that succeed are the ones that are willing to be bold. And Jared Goff, listen, since 2017, in the 4 seasons that he's been with Sean McVay, the Rams have won 42 games. That's tied for the second most with Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll, one behind Tom Brady, who's won 47 games in that span. Otherwise, the Rams have won the second most games with Jared Goff and Sean McVay, that duo. And because of that fantastic run, that he had in the Super Bowl, the Rams felt compelled to sign Jared Goff to that massive deal, that $134 million deal, 5 years. They guaranteed him $110 million because you had to. He's the starting quarterback of a team that just led you to the Super Bowl. We saw it. Joe Flacco made a ton of money after he won the Super Bowl. You can't just bail on guys if they lead you to a Super Bowl. That in and of itself is impressive. But if they were to trade him now, they'd have about $66 million in dead cap money. They trade him next year, they still have about $22 million cap hit. So clearly, Les Snead said, moving on from Jared Goff, the money we've invested in him, that's not easy to overcome. So clearly the organization is saying, they've indicated, hey, we want to move off of Jared Goff. And you've got that defense that is elite right now. And they're only getting older. They're cheaper as a whole collective unit. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald have consumed a lot of that money on the defense, but as a whole, it's not so expensive. But if you're the Rams, I think that you should keep Jared Goff for at least one more season. And here's why. First of all, the hit on your cap and the dead money would be absolutely destructive and a crushing blow to an organization that already doesn't have any first-round draft picks this year because of that Jalen Ramsey trade. So if you've got plans to rebuild quickly in the draft, that's not going to happen because you've already traded away all your great assets and picks in this year's draft. Yeah, you have some the third round, fourth round, fifth round pick, but you got no first round picks this year. Second, you were too good last year to be able to draft a quarterback high enough in the draft that could maybe replace Goff. And better yet, all the quarterbacks who maybe you would trade Goff for to try and collect a better quarterback, they likely won't be able to actually be traded to the Rams. Let's take quarterbacks first. Deshaun Watson. First of all, you're the Texans. There's no way in hell you're trading Deshaun Watson for any package revolving around Jared Goff. You need someone with future potential. You pretty much have seen what you're going to see out of Jared Goff. There's no way they're doing that trade. How about Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins is pretty much, he's got a ceiling to him. We've seen what he's been doing in Washington, in Minnesota. I honestly don't know if you're the Rams, if you'd really want to do that and pursue that trade. I think I'd rather have Jared Goff at this moment. What about Carson Wentz with the Eagles? Their salaries kind of match up. Well, that's kind of a wash. If anything, Jared Goff has proven to be better. We'll see if Carson Wentz can resurrect his career perhaps with a new head coach. But there's no way that the Rams are going to trade straight up Jared Goff for Carson Wentz, given the recent play of Carson Wentz. The guy that would be interesting to trade for if you're the Rams is for Matthew Stafford out of Detroit, but I don't think the Lions would trade Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff because I think Matthew Stafford is better. And again, the Lions are trying to rebuild. They got a new coach trying to instill a new culture, and I don't think that they would trade for a guy in Jared Goff who's already entering his 6th year in the league. You kind of have a good idea about who he is. Maybe Matt Ryan. Well, I don't know necessarily if you're the Rams if you want to make that trade for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is just as immobile, if not more immobile than Jared Goff, and that's hard to find. So he's an aging quarterback. The Rams still have a future, so I don't think they'd want to mortgage that by trading for 1 or 2 years of Matt Ryan. So now you're left with who? Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers? I think it's kind of a wash. Maybe you make the trade. It's actually slightly less you'd have to pay for Jimmy Garoppolo than for Jared Goff. But I don't think, first of all, that the 49ers would do that trade because they've dominated the Rams with Jared Goff precisely because Jared Goff is the quarterback. And I don't think the Rams are that high on Jimmy Garoppolo. So Then it leads to the third reason. Third reason is because you didn't really have a true number one wide receiver this past year and really over the last couple of years. I love Cooper Kupp. He wasn't available against the Packers in that matchup. Robert Woods is a great, perhaps number two wide receiver. Van Jefferson maybe can be that speedster. I don't know if he's a number one overall receiver. So Cooper Kupp to me is the best wide receiver the Rams have. And so they didn't have him against the Packers. So I think that if you can trade for a number one overall receiver, maybe that might alleviate some of the pressure off of Jared Goff and provide him that extra security blanket. I like Tyler Higbee. They've got a great set of tight ends, Gerald Everett. These guys are really good, but I think that maybe they need a trade. They've got a bunch of B to B plus wide receivers, but they don't have any true star at that position. And then finally, listen, Jared Goff is still a young guy. He's still just 25 years old. We've seen improvements every single season. Listen, he and McVay have made the postseason 3 out of the 4 years that they have been together. They reached a Super Bowl already in year 3. And if you actually look at the numbers, Jared Goff actually improved his stats this year. He had his best completion percentage of his career this past year, 67%. Completed the second most passes in a season for his career this year. So, for those reasons, I think you take a chance and you keep him around for one more season. And if at the end of next year you have the same result, he doesn't show much improvement, okay, then you cut bait. Then you look to make a trade and move on. But I think that he has earned the right, and I do think that he is good enough where, listen, turnovers are a major issue. And this offense used to be a juggernaut on offense, and they kind of faded into a mediocre average offense, a more predictable offense. But I do think that if accuracy was an area that he could take a step forward in and take a major leap in last year, and that's typically the most difficult area to work on and improve as a quarterback, because that's pretty innate. That's an intrinsic ability. Either you can throw an accurate ball or you can't. So if he can improve on that, I think that ball security is something that you can give him at least one more year to take a chance on. I understand the immobile part, but Tom Brady's immobile. So if he can get it done, there's no reason why a guy in Jared Goff, who is 18 years younger, can't. That's my thought. So the first thought that I also had transitioning to a preview of the Super Bowl, and again, I'm going to dive into and delve into more of the narratives and the storylines next week. But my first thought when it was finalized that we're going to have Tom Brady and the Buccaneers and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, obviously, like most of you, the first thought that came to mind was the headline: Brady versus Mahomes. The GOAT, the current GOAT, versus the guy who I believe to be the future GOAT, right? And it's interesting because when we think about GOATs in sports, right, the first guy that comes to mind is typically Michael Jordan. Is fairly universally recognized as the greatest of all time. I understand LeBron is making a case for it. His chapter is not done. But one of the reasons why we look at a guy like Michael Jordan as the greatest of all time is because he went 6-0 in the finals and was dominant in every single one. A series never went to a game 7. Yet people forget that in his first postseason with the Bulls, when he was just 24 years old, he faced the number 1 seed Boston Celtics and Larry Bird and got swept. Got swept in his first ever postseason career playoff experience. He even got swept back-to-back years by the Boston Celtics in 2 straight postseasons. But no one seems to knock on MJ or use that as validation that he's not the greatest of all time, or that people don't consider that as a blemish on his career and on his resume. Why? Because first of all, he was super young. It was just his third year in the league. He was taking on an overmatched number one seed in a guy in Larry Bird, who at the time was a top 2 player in the NBA along with Magic Johnson. And he dropped 63 points, and Bird called him Jesus on sneakers after the game. And again, just because he lost, people don't hold that against him. He's still revered and still viewed as the GOAT. So Mahomes is just 25 years old right now. And in his first season as the starting quarterback, he leads the Kansas City Chiefs to the number one seed, to an AFC championship game. He wins the MVP, throws for over 5,000 yards, 5,097 yards, 50 touchdowns, just 12 interceptions. And in his first ever postseason run, he makes it to the AFC championship game and loses to the Patriots and a guy in Tom Brady, who at the time was a 5-time Super Bowl champion, a 3-time Super Bowl MVP, a 3-time NFL MVP, obviously now 6-time champion, 4-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time NFL MVP. He loses 37-31 in overtime in a game in which most people actually think they should have won if it were not for that pre-snap penalty, because Brady threw a pick that would have ended the game. And so I bring that up because just like Michael Jordan, Mahomes wasn't supposed to beat Tom Brady in that spot. And just like MJ was 24, Mahomes was 23 when he played Tom Brady in that Super Bowl. 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in 3 AFC championship games, 18 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions in his postseason career. And while football is certainly a different sport, you only play one game for all the marbles. It's the ultimate team sport. And because of that, we don't put the onus entirely on Brady. He doesn't bear the entire burden or blame when they lose in the Super Bowl because it's a team sport. The other piece of it is because Brady has never lost in the Super Bowl to a contemporary or a guy that's viewed as the same level as him, that's viewed as an equal. The 3 Super Bowls he's lost, twice to Eli Manning, once to Nick Foles. No one ever says, oh yeah, Eli Manning and Nick Foles are better than Tom Brady at any point in their career. Maybe they had one particularly better game at the Super Bowl. Nick Foles played the game of the century to win that Super Bowl for the Eagles, but the argument is never, oh, Eli Manning or Foles are better than Tom Brady. So to me, this is a bigger Super Bowl for Patrick Mahomes, because not only is he maturing and he's just scratching the surface of his potential, right, improving every year, but this is the first time in the Super Bowl that he's actually facing a contemporary and a guy that's viewed as his equal, as an equal adversary, as an equal foe and counterpart. So naturally, if you play a contemporary in the biggest spot of the season, that will have a lasting impact. And even though Mahomes is a younger, aspiring quarterback, aspiring to be the greatest football player ever, to attain that GOAT status, right now, he's 2-2 versus Brady. 0-1 versus Brady in the postseason. So he needs to get in that win column, because any future win, if he were to lose to Patrick Mahomes, to Tom Brady now, if he were to beat Brady anytime in the future, we wouldn't value that win as much. We wouldn't give it the proper merit that it deserves. And there'd be less credence to the argument that he's the greatest of all time because Brady keeps aging. And so eventually you're going to beat a guy who's now turning 44 and 45 and so on and so forth. So this is an opportunity for Patrick Mahomes that he may not get back. You might not have a better opportunity than you do right now to beat a guy in Tom Brady. You might not get any more chances and legitimate shots at it. And then finally, Tom Brady's already lost in the Super Bowl. So this desire for a perfect undefeated record in the Super Bowl is over. And he's already proven that, hey, I can lead a team to a Super Bowl without Bill Belichick. That was the big question mark. That was his big goal. Now, obviously, it would be great if he could win it, but the mere fact that he led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that epitomized mediocrity over the last 13 seasons and hadn't been back to the Super Bowl since 2002, the mere fact that he led that team back to the Super Bowl is a major accomplishment in and of itself. So there's nothing left for him to necessarily prove on that front as it pertains to his ability to lead, juxtapose Bill Belichick. But you're Patrick Mahomes. You're trying to maintain an unblemished record. Right now, you're 1-0 with one Finals MVP or one Super Bowl MVP. Now's an opportunity to corroborate and strengthen that case as you're on your quest to being the GOAT. And just like Michael Jordan, if you lose to Larry Bird, if you lose to Tom Brady, that discussion's not going to end. It's not going to be dead, but it will certainly take a major hit if you don't. So, again, I'll get into more of the storylines as it gets closer to Super Bowl next week. Again, appreciate you tuning in right here, Morning Joe on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. So it was my favorite athlete growing up has always been Kobe Bryant. You can see his jersey right behind me right here. And yesterday was the 1-year passing of the late, great Laker icon in Kobe Bryant. And there were a lot of people commemorating his life, his legacy. And I want to take the rest of this time to share some of my favorite teammates, some of my favorite moments from his career, and pay a little tribute to the guy that's had such an impact on my life as well. And first of all, a lot of players have been outspoken. We've seen Pau Gasol uh, recently. It's funny. He remembered a line. One of my favorite lines that Kobe used to say is, "Friends hang sometimes, banners hang forever." And he actually trademarked that slogan. And Pau Gasol was one of Kobe's teammates. To me, he was really the first teammate to help Kobe ascend to that status that he's reached right now and helped him attain that level of success that he needed to accomplish without Shaq, because he won 3 titles with Shaquille O'Neal. And then for about 3-4 years after that, wasn't really able to achieve much, made the postseason a couple times, missed it a couple times. And Pau Gasol, of course, was like a brother to Kobe, and he checked in on Vanessa a lot, stayed at a house in Orange County after his passing and was just there for any assistance that they might have needed and sent Vanessa and the kids flowers back in April for what would have been their wedding anniversary, and sent flowers to Gigi for what would have been her birthday in May. And so I remember one of the greatest stories was that right when Pau Gasol was traded to the Lakers, in that in that summer, that previous summer in 2007, Kobe was vacationing with his wife Vanessa in Barcelona and was working out in near Pau Gasol's hotel room. And that's kind of when they kind of bumped into each other and got to know each other a little bit more. And when they finally made that trade further down the season, Kobe knocked on Gasol's door at 1:30 a.m. and Gasol let him in. And I love the line. He says, "I landed in Washington that first night to join the team, and after my physical, he came to my room to tell me, 'Hey, very excited to have you. Very happy that you are here. But now let's go win a championship.'" So it made me think about, okay, who are my favorite teammates of Kobe Bryant? And there are a lot of there are a couple honorable mentions that I'll mention as well. But my top four teammates, if I have to create a starting five, Kobe's obviously the shooting guard in there. Who would round out the remaining four? So first of all, Shaquille O'Neal is the first teammate. There's no question about that. The most dominant big man ever. They won 3 NBA finals together. He was really the big brother. And it was one of those situations where I think when we look back at their history, sure, we feel like they could have won and accomplished even more together, but what they were able to achieve in the short time span together is absolutely legendary. It's absolutely legendary. And so Shaquille O'Neal is the number one teammate for me when it comes to Kobe. Number two, I have Pau Gasol. He fully bought into Kobe Bryant. He was the first all-star teammate that Kobe had when he had really come into his own as his own leader, because Pau Gasol bought in fully, and Kobe wouldn't have wanted to go to war, wouldn't have wanted to go to battle with any other player. Pau Gasol was instrumental in helping to shift the narrative, alter the narrative surrounding Kobe, and they won 2 championships together, made 3 finals in 3 consecutive years. One of the most loyal teammates he ever had. And honestly, after Shaq, he was probably the most talented teammate, probably the second most talented teammate that Kobe has ever had. And that leads to number 3, which to me is Derek Fisher. Listen, everyone needs that point guard, that soldier who's just going to ride and die with you. And Derek Fisher was always with Kobe through the high moments, through the low moments, every single championship run. Derek Fisher was there with Kobe Bryant, just provided that stability and that added confidence to Kobe. There was always this sense of insurance when Derek Fisher is out on the floor with Kobe. And I think that every time Kobe needed someone else to step up and make a big play, when he was double, triple team, Derek Fisher always stepped up to the plate and delivered year in and year out. And then that leads to the final fourth favorite teammate of Kobe Bryant's to round out the top 5, and that's Lamar Odom. Lamar Odom, reigning sixth man of the year with Kobe, was part of those championship runs, at least in 09 and in 2010. Kobe was there for Lamar Odom when he was dealing with his alcohol and drug abuse issues, visited him. And I think that Lamar Odom has a lot of reverence for Kobe, not only in the way that he supported him during his times of need, but also because Lamar Odom was a really talented, special player. I mean, Lamar Odom was one of those first guys who was kind of this power forward point guard, this forward point guard concept where you could just give the ball to a 6'10 guy, dribble it up the floor, handle it like a guard, pull up for three, drive to the basket, could defend, very versatile. He could defend 1 through 5. Lamar Odom was a really versatile player, and people kind of underestimate when you look at those great championship Laker teams, especially in 09 and in 2010. Lamar Odom kind of flies under the radar because you think about Powell and you think about some of the honorable mentions that I have, like Trevor Ariza and Ron Artest, and in the early 2000s, Rick Fox and Robert Horry. Those round out the honorable mentions for me. But Lamar Odom was the unsung hero. He kind of helped form that big three in a way before Andrew Bynum kind of ascended. You had Pau Gasol, you had Ron Artest, you had Derek Fisher, and Lamar Odom was coming off the bench as a sixth man of the year and just giving you buckets, rebounds, assists. He was absolutely fantastic, and I know that he and Kobe had a special bond and a special rapport that had persisted throughout their entire career. So those are my top 5 Kobe teammates. Now I want to break down my top 5 Kobe moments. And listen, there are so many honorable mentions here, and this list is not going to do it justice. You have the Matt Barnes faking the inbounds pass into Kobe's face and him not flinching, not blinking at all. That's just a fantastic moment. The 81-point games for Kobe, the 62 points in the through 3 quarters against Dallas. I mean, the list goes on, and the buzzer beater over Dwayne Wade in Miami. But I want to break down my top 5 for me personally. And number 5 was the masked Mamba game versus Miami. If people remember, in that 2012 season, Kobe and D Wade were going at it in the All-Star game, and D Wade broke his nose, and they were slated to face off and match up against each other between the Lakers and the Heat a couple weeks later at Staples Center. And Kobe, with a broken nose, wearing a clear mask, drops 33 on D Wade and leads the Lakers to a 10-point win over the Miami Heat. That was just the ultimate sign of perseverance and his willingness to endure anything to play basketball. I mean, this guy battled through so many injuries, and that was just one little glimpse of his unrelenting character and just absolute desire to be out there every single game that he could play. Dropped 33 in the win. Number 4, I remember this. I was watching it at a hotel, in a hotel room. My family was traveling. And against the Phoenix Suns, Game 6, Western Conference Finals, Kobe drops 37 points and double clutches, hits the series clinching jumper over Grant Hill to give the Lakers a 107-100 lead, and forces the head coach of the Suns at the time, Alvin Gentry, to call a timeout. Gives him a little tap on the waist, and does the airplane back to the Lakers bench. And that was just a spectacular moment, capping off what was a spectacular series for Kobe. And that was one of the most legendary series and performances, because on the road, hostile environment in Phoenix, who really had given the Lakers fits the entire series and the entire season, and for his ability again to come through when the Lakers needed him most, was absolutely special. Number 3 is the amnesty game. Mark Cuban decides to tell the Lakers, hey, maybe you should amnesty Kobe. And he says that prior to the game. And Kobe heard that and went out and dropped 38 points against the Mavericks, was hitting tough jumpers over he had a stretch over Jay Crowder. He hit 3 straight shots over Jay Crowder. He was given the work to Crowder, given the work to OJ Mayo, to Sean Marion. He was giving it to everyone. Vince Carter in the final bucket of the game, or at least to really ice the game. They're up 94-92, puts the ball on the floor, drives it to the left wing, pump fakes. Vince Carter flies by, pulls up, hits the jumper. They go up 96-92. And that was just a really, really special moment for me. I remember watching that entire game and just thinking, why in the world? Not that the Lakers were actually going to amnesty him or think about it, but what in the world was Mark Cuban thinking trying to talk trash to this guy prior to the game? Because this is someone that feeds off of that negativity, off that criticism. And he just goes out and balls out and is just the ultimate professional and the ultimate baller, just the ultimate Mamba. So that leads to my second favorite moment, which was this Friday night comeback game versus the Toronto Raptors. And I remember this game. I was thinking, man, this is just a really muddled game right now. The Lakers just were not playing that well. This was with Dwight Howard and Steve Nash. And Kobe goes out and drops 41 points. They win in overtime. And in the final, at the 150 mark, Allen Anderson is defending Kobe. Kobe's at the 3-point line. Pump fake. He picks up his dribble, pump fakes about 3 times, then finally rises up, hits a 3-pointer that cuts the lead to 2. And then they're down 4 with 29 seconds left. And quickly, he collects an inbounds pass in the corner, quick turnaround, fall away 3-pointer, knocks that one down, cuts the lead to 1. And then to tie the game with 8 seconds left, gets the inbounds at the top of the right wing, pump fakes, lets Amir Johnson fly by. Rudy Gay puts a hand in his face to contest, and he knocks down a 30-foot three from the wing to send it to overtime. Then the game's tied 115-115. Allen Anders defending Kobe with 15 seconds left in the game. Then Aaron Gray fatefully decides to step up and try and double him. He goes around him, blows past him, and drives to the basket and dunks it home with 2 hands through 2 defenders. And they win 117-115 in overtime. He drops 41 points, 6 rebounds, 12 assists in that matchup. And that was just his willingness to just it's referred as one of those willed games. He willed his team to the victory. And that relentless pursuit of greatness and striking the ultimate fear in your opponent was displayed in that matchup, because he was just so not only clutch, but the fear and the intimidation factor that he possessed over his opponents was palpable. I mean, you just saw opponents just kind of shiver when they know, hey, this guy's about to let one fly. And then that leads to my final favorite Kobe moment. I remember watching this in my freshman year dorm at the University of Wisconsin. Kobe's finale, capping off a tremendous career, ends up dropping 60 points in his finale, 23 points in the fourth quarter. They trailed by 10 points entering the fourth quarter, or 12 points entering the fourth quarter, and he drops 23 points to cap off what was an iconic career and an ultimate Laker icon and legend. And would have loved to have seen what he was about to embark on. He'd already won an Oscar. Would have loved to have seen what Gianna, his daughter, might have been able to accomplish in her wonderful and promising basketball career. And we were, unfortunately, we didn't get that opportunity. We didn't get that chance. We were stricken of that. And those are my favorite Kobe moments. All right, finally, wrapping up a little bit earlier today is my Malkin's moments. And I have a special moment this week again surrounding Kobe. So the Italian city that he actually grew up in Italy is Reggio Emilia, and that's where Kobe lived between ages 6 and 13. And they just announced And the reason he lived there, his father, Joe Bryant, was a professional basketball player overseas. So that's where he lived for much of his youth. And so the city, in honor of celebrating and commemorating his life, his 1 year anniversary, is set to debut a plaza in honor of Kobe and his daughter Gianna. It's going to be called the Largo Kobe and Gianna Bryant, in honor of the 1 year anniversary of their death. And they'll be honored with a plaque and a ginkgo biloba tree. The city plans on displaying purple and gold lights throughout the nighttime for a nighttime celebration. And so that's a really nice gesture from the Italian city. And then also thoughts and prayers go out to Sekou Smith and Sekou Smith's family. Um, the late great NBA reporter passed away in a battle with COVID-19 yesterday. Was a great NBA journalist for NBA TV, Turner Sports, hosted the Hang Time podcast, and I really enjoyed not only reading his articles and his stories, but he was a very affable, very personable, and and likable guy. And it's a shame that we lose another great member of our society due to COVID. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. You've been watching Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.